Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back. We are going to talk about changing lives in terms of where you live and how you live. And that's courtesy of a guy that changes that for you in terms of the structure. We have an amazing architect with us. Mr. John Riggio joins us. John, how are you doing today?
Hi, good to see you.
You too. And just before we went on here, we just realized that we grew up in the same area. I had no idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. In the Long Island, New York area. You're now in New Jersey. I'm still in the New York area. But the one thing that I always hear about is, and by the way, you ever get back to Long Island?
Yeah, I still go there every once in a while.
Yeah. It's funny. I just passed some places that some new construction. So I was thinking about you since we last talked. And the one thing that's challenging here and many other areas around the country is getting the proper permits to do any kind of changes. How do you move that forward? What are your suggestions for anybody, or do you deal with all of that as well?
Yeah, I think as far as like Long Island is concerned, areas that are like usually in the suburbs, they usually each township has their own building department. And then you would work directly with that building department. So on Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk, they have so many different building departments. Each town has their own building department. Maybe a borough might have their own building department. And they usually would have their own set of forms. But overall, they are all working on the same building code. I mean, that's one thing they all have in common. As far as the zoning code, each town would make their own zoning code. And then with the zoning code, they would have their own set of forms, and you would then have to put in an application from the forms from each different town or borough, and you would submit it to them. Then as far as getting the approval is based on the basic standards that they have. Most townships and have a basic standard set of drawings that they would need. And this comes from years of experience. You know that each drawing is going to need certain details. They're going to need certain zoning information. So that comes with the experience of working as an architect. You know what each building department is going to need. Then from there, you would then submit your forms, your drawings to them. Some building departments might need contract information with the application at the same time. And from there, we'd go there as one packet application you would send to them. They'd review it, have a plan examiner look at everything. And if there's any additional information they need, they would send a reply letter. Sometimes on a job with a variance, you would submit the job knowing you're going to get what's called a denial letter back. They give you a letter with a rejection, knowing that there's a certain zoning problem on the property. And from there, you would then have to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the same thing with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Each town has their own Zoning Board of Appeals with their own rules. Some towns have an architectural board. If you have a historic property, it would then have to go to a landmark board, and it would then also go for a variance. So it depends on what situation the property is that they would have to go through different approvals. And from any objection, add information, I would just go through the plan, add any information they need. It would just do a simple resubmission to the township, and then from there you would get an approval. If the contractor already has the information submitted, they would just issue the permit right away. If it's some township, you would then have to give all the paperwork, the approvals to the contractor, and then he would have to go there on his own and get the permit issued. That's depending on his insurance and his license, that everything is up to date, and then they would give him the permit separately. In New York City, in the big city areas, sometimes for many years, they used to have a very complicated series of paperwork and long lines and things like that. And that was going on for a long time, where I had to have an expediter, and I used to do my own expediting, but then it was very time consuming. You'd have to have also an extra expediter that would have a filing representative. They would have giving special ID and go into the building departments. And from there, they'd have to wait online and get the papers would go through. And then each stage, we'd have to get different approvals. And then also I'd have to go back in by myself or with with the or have an expediter go there, and then they wait online to get the permits. In recent years, in particular in New York City, they have started to change things where they now have a New York City DOB now, with everything is being done on the computer, and things are much more streamlined. The things are going pretty good with the new system. They still have filing representatives, but the requirement for the filing representatives to go to the building department is really no longer there for most jobs. Only on some things you'd have to go in person. So that's one big change that has been taking place recently. And I think since with the COVID, some things have started to go ahead where they switched everything over where you can do almost all the applications through the computer. So recently I've been doing that, everything on DOB now. That is the one big change that's taken place. As far as New Jersey, I think one comparison between New York and New Jersey is the forms are standardized in within the whole state as far as the building application. And of course they're using the same building code. The zoning code is different from town to town. It's still every zoning area is completely different. Each town makes their own zoning code, their own zoning numbers and letters for each type of zoning, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, and they have their own zoning code. A lot of the zoning codes, a lot of them are now compiled on the internet. They have different companies taking everyone's zoning codes and they're putting it on the internet, and so you can access the latest codes directly on the internet now. In the old days, you used to have to go in person to the town and get a copy of their zoning codes, but today you can just get it online. So it makes it much easier.
Right.
So,
You know what I find interesting though, John, what you mentioned before, when you need to get a variance, you submit knowing you're going to get denied. Like, you know that it's getting turned down so that you can turn it around.
Yes, it's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Huh. Now you've been doing this for many, many years. You started, I remember we talked, in terms of drafting, even before there were CAD programs. What are some of the obstacles that you had to overcome to get where you are today?
Oh, okay. Yes, as far as the obstacles, sure, there are things like getting a job, getting experience, and things like that. I mean, that's like a basic obstacle to get around. And I think it depends on what kind of obstacle, really. I guess
was it personal obstacles or any job obstacles that you had to get around to get to the point where you are? I mean, you've designed so many different buildings and worked on so many different things that I wonder, the path that somebody takes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think one obstacle really as far as my career is concerned is originally there was always a lot of ups and downs in the economy. As far as construction, this was a big thing. A lot of people used to talk about this, and sometimes they were always waiting for when things were going to go up and when things were going to go down in construction. I think over the last few years, things have been somewhat stable. So no one's really worrying about the construction industry really shutting down. But that is one big obstacle that was happening. And I think that could really affect you when you're going to college and when you're trying to get a job. Like your things are going good, you get a job, there's a number of projects to keep you going that you're going to get experience. And then all of a sudden the economy stops, the construction slows down. There's a lot of people going out of business. All of a sudden everyone's out of work. This was a big thing in construction. And because with construction, as I noticed, usually as far as the economics are concerned, it takes a while for things to really get going with the big projects. People, they have to get the money together and then they have an idea of expanding. And then sometimes I noticed when the economy starts to go down, the work can shut off very quickly. People are not going to invest any more money in construction. So things slow down very quickly. I think over the last few years, things have been stable. So the worry of things going down haven't been too bad. I think with the COVID problem, I think a lot of people, they had the big problem with the shutdown, people having to close their businesses, things. I was lucky that in this industry, things in fact were getting busier because there was a real need to build more area, more square footage. But it was, so that's good. So that's good. So compared to a lot of people had to shut down, but in this industry, things stayed level. So I think things are happy as far as that's concerned. And
What's your projections? Now we talk about the construction industry, the fuel price, supply chain. I just had a conversation with my friend the other day, and he is looking to do some renovations on his house, and he's kind of handy. Even just ordering some things, he couldn't. He's like, oh my gosh, an attic stair is 4-month wait. And now there's some talk about the trucking industry being impacted by the gas prices and other factors. What's your feel on that? Where do you think we're going to go in terms of the construction industry?
I think the latest scare was really the problem with the supply of lumber. The supply of lumber started to double the price of wood just recently. I think since the construction industry is doing very well, there's still the need to really expand. People are still going ahead with their projects, and then I think right now it's sort of flowing over. A lot more people are going for construction loans. This is to take the worry out of the increase in the price. So a lot of things are going into where there's more construction loans involved on each job, and that's the most recent problem with the economics. Now the price of lumber, I think just on the short term, it just went down just a little, like maybe 20%. So that helps out, that there isn't too much stress on the cost of construction, that things are going to slow down. I mean, that could happen. I think usually it's the overall economy, but if the cost of construction goes up too high, it could slow down the projects. It could make the jobs become smaller. To get a downscale the job and make it less square footage, so less a smaller project for me. So that isn't too good.
Yeah, for you, I always wonder about this as an architect and doing what you've been doing for so long. Do you, like, if you're driving down a city street or you're looking around, do you pick things apart? Like, do you look at a building and say, yeah, you know what, they could have done this, or they could have done that? Is that how your brain operates?
Oh yeah. I think
Yeah.
over the years from doing this work, yeah, I look at the different buildings, and yes, I can see the different styles, or see what kind of decisions they're making, design decisions on each project. Yes, I look at that. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. And anything stand out in your mind, like recently, if you were now driving through the city or the suburbs and saw something that was done that shouldn't have been done, or should have been done a different way, which would have been a better benefit in your mind?
I think what happens is sometimes when I look at the job, especially if there's like a new design, it's always an indication that that's design that they're making might be like the beginning of a new trend. And that's the newest way I look at buildings now, is I see if they're adding a new material, the design looks different, maybe even different colors of what they're doing with the materials, is really more like an indication that things might be heading into a new trend. And then all of the design styles have to change slightly, and that's what I'm most concerned with, because a lot of times with design, I like to stay up to the current contemporary styles. So
Sure.
when I look at new jobs, I see them, and I see that they might have new changes to the current style, and because things have slowly changed over the number of years. Some of it has to do with materials, some of it has to just do with the basic styles. Maybe the styles become also like more elaborate, and that's one thing I look at when I see the different buildings that they're constructing today.
John, do you get more excited about the outside of a building or the inside when you're putting it all together? Is it more about curb appeal? You want it to look a certain way, or do you really focus a lot on the inside?
I think we're looking more for the outside of the building. I think that is one thing I look for. Then there's also different points about the inside that usually are taking the different trends. A lot of times it's the entrance area. If they're going to go with the 2 height space, And then like what they're doing with the rooms, sometimes they're gonna open the rooms, have 2, 3 rooms that are open. You're gonna have like an island or like an L-shaped kitchen. And those are some key things I look at with the design. Some of those things are changing depending on the on how the contemporary look is starting to change as each new design is made.
So yeah, open concept for kitchens and houses been big for, I want to say, at least 6, 7, 8 years. Does that look like a trend that's going to continue?
Yes, yes, it is still continuing. There's still the trend to open up the walls. I'm still putting in beams. That is one thing I've been working on. Is a lot of times is removing walls, putting in new beams, and this is on either a major alteration, addition, or new house, and that is the new way of doing it. One way, like on the new houses, like I explained, is a lot of times people we're using the I-joists to really make a larger span, so you don't have to have as many walls in between, and you could just span a larger area to make an open living room or like a kitchen, a dining room. A lot of people going with a kitchen, a small eating area, and like a family room. And the living room and the isn't really the big center point. I've been working on a lot of ones that are really a 2-story family room. So instead of having a 2-story living room, they have a 2-story family room. This is the latest trend also. This is the family rooms in the back of the house, has 2 stories open. Some of them I put some skylights in, some of them that don't have skylights, but it's like a 2-story open area. And then in the front of the house, we usually have like a 2-story entry area. So you have say that you have like maybe double doors, entrance area, a stair that's open 2 stories, and then across towards to the back of the house is a 2-story family room. This is something new.
Would you say, are you wasting space in doing that? Now, and what you're saying, I've seen some homes like that recently, and they're higher end homes that they're doing that. But are you using your space effectively by doing that?
What's happening is there is an equation. What's happening is with the double height space, the floor that is open does not count as floor area. So you can make a larger footprint of the house, but you're still using up some valuable area. So you can make a larger footprint of the house to try to maximize the floor area. And but it is like it's like an equation where you could get a larger floor area, but you still don't have the extra floor above say like the family room that's completely open. So that is one thing that is part of the design now with having the family room. You can make a larger first floor area, but then it's coming close to coming through the maximum of the coverage of the building, because every property you're not allowed to really cover the property over a certain percentage. So say you're only allowed to cover 20% of the property. So by having a larger first floor, you're getting closer to that maximum. You go over that maximum, then they might have to go for a variance. And usually most people don't want to go for a variance. So that's how you max out the zoning on a house like that.
So this came about in my last house. I wanted to add more space, and I was told, and I guess it turned out, it was cheaper to add a room in the back as opposed to build up or add a room on top of the garage. Is that usually true?
No, it's usually less expensive to just build on top of existing foundation. Existing foundation could increase the price by 1/3 per square foot. It's a lot more expensive. And then also by doing that, adding on, you're getting closer to maxing out that building coverage. So it depends on how large the house is that it's close to the coverage. And then also a lot of houses, they might have been built under a different code. So a lot of houses are built under a code that was smaller, and then they change it where you have larger setbacks. And then there's a big problem adding an addition. It usually has to get set in a few feet. So that is one issue. But if you build over existing foundations, usually that's expensive.
Yeah, and also I guess you have to look at the tax benefit, because they're always especially in the Northeast, we're always looking at the taxes. So what suggestions on that in terms of building to get around?
Really with the tax situation, the tax department is really separate from my work. But I always have to have an understanding of what's going on with the tax department. What's going on is is usually the tax assessor would take the increase of cost of construction for your addition, or maybe if it's a new house, and they take that number, add it on to any existing value of the value of the property, or the value of existing house. And then from that, it would then get multiplied by the tax rate. So that then the tax rate would then, that would give you the new number. So, but the whole thing with the tax assessor's office, they're really a separate department. And then, so by the time they assess the house again, they would usually take those different factors in. And if you look at the tax roll for each house, like after they make an addition, if you go on to, say like, go into Redfin, and you look at the tax roll, you see if there's an increase in value of the house, and then you see it multiplied by the local tax rate, which might go up or go down, and then that's how you get the new yearly tax rate. That's how they calculate it.
How does it work? And by the way, we're talking with architect John Riggio. JohnRiggio.com is your website. Riggio, Riggio, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you're planning to do a renovation, we're talking residential at this point. What are some of the things that you should keep in mind? Because I know a lot of people are staying in their houses and making them bigger or renovating them. Any kind of tips that stand out for you that somebody should know that you want to share?
Okay. Yeah, I think if you wanted to add on to your house, I think the best thing to do is to go to an architect and get a zoning analysis of your property. And by doing that, you then get an idea of the what you can build, the size, the maximum size you can build, the maximum height of your house. In fact, a lot of times over the years, it isn't a bad idea to even have a cost estimate done. An architect can make a cost estimate. A lot of people, they go directly to the contractor, see if you can get a cost estimate direct, so they can give you a exact number of how much it's going to cost to build the addition. I'm usually on as far as the cost of construction, a lot of things are like a per square foot. But then as you get into the building of the house, you might want to add on more, get better fixtures, better toilet fixtures, kitchen fixtures, moldings, things like that. And that could also then increase the square footage price of the house.
You bring up a good point, John. When it comes to estimating costs and kind of starting the project, is it better to go to a contractor first who's going to refer or suggest an architect, or start with the architect?
Yeah, it depends on really who you know. If you don't know any contractors, yes, you can call an architect. And I think an architect usually would give maybe 3 references for a contract. That's the standard. And from there, you would then have a bid between the 3 contractors. And from there, you can then select a contractor and make a contract with them.
When the contractor is coming up with the costs involved in terms of materials and everything, the scope of the project, is the architect really doing that in the beginning? Would it be better just to get that, an idea instead of calling the contractor? What do you think on that?
Oh, okay. As far as the cost of construction?
Yeah, just or the scope of the project. Is the architect can figure that all out and give you that information, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think the only thing is when it comes to the cost of construction, there is a slight variation between the price of the actual cost of construction. There is a slight difference depending on who you hire of how much it's really going to cost. I mean, there's also a slight variation in architect fees, and that is one consideration. Usually with my clients, I sort of have a current going rate of per square foot price, and that also depends on what area you're building in and what kind of construction. And then from there, I would usually just give them a basic price. Then to really get into how much it's going to cost before they even start construction is really to find a contractor that can give you a written estimate.
Gotcha. Yeah, as we're talking it out here, I'm just thinking, the architect's going to be able to accurately tell you what can be done in terms of, variances, zoning and everything like that, where I don't know so much that the contractor can do that. That's where I was going with that. I was thinking, maybe you should start with the architect over the contractor at that point.
Yes, it really, the way the architect profession works is really if a client that has no idea of what they want to build. They do not know any contractors at all. They didn't talk to any contractors. Going to the architect first is really the correct way to go about constructing an addition to your house, alteration, new, or just a new structure. And this would start you from the basic zoning of your house to then applying for bids to a contractor. So that is one way to do it.
Gotcha.
Of course,
And
some people know a contractor first, and then they might ask around, where they can get the drawings. But usually, if you were to start with the architect first, getting all the zoning information and the set of drawings to get the bid, isn't the wrong way to do it. It's the correct way to go ahead with starting your project.
well, I'll just share in a second when I did that renovation, and it was about maybe 10 years ago. The architect was the one that really sent it home, because I put on it was like 40 feet by 20 feet in back of the house, but it was all about the windows. I wanted a lot of windows. I wanted a lot of light, and he figured out what was acceptable in terms of the R value with the glass, and how much light how big the windows could be, that we could put windows all the way around. A contractor, I don't think, would have known, how to do that. It had to start with the architect.
Yeah, that's really part of the architect's job. Is anything with the energy code, windows sizes. There's a whole bunch of different codes involved with that. With as far as windows, they have a new thing with the insulation, and right now it's being worked with called res check. They also have some consideration with that with commercial work. It's called com check. But the res check, as far as an addition like that, you would have to go through the res check and see the size, the amount of square footage of the windows, the amount of insulation they have in the walls, the floors, the ceilings. And from that, it would make an automatic printout, because what happens is the res check is really based on the codes of each state. And from there, they already have a chart that would then give you a number, what's an allowable number for the R value, what is the your R value proposing, and then from there you would know you are within the amount of window area or you're in excess of the area. So that is particularly one job for an architect to figure out. The contractor usually doesn't concern himself with that. You would need the architect really to put together that res check, put their stamp on it, their signature, and they use that in the inspection of the house. They have a insulation inspection of their house by the building department, and they're going to look at the R values and make sure that they are within what was within the code and what was shown on the proposed drawings.
Gotcha. Yeah, it worked out on my end, and the only thing I would have done differently is I used big tiles on the floor, and in the wintertime it was chilly, so either put some kind of heating underneath the tiles, or maybe a wood floor, because and it was on a slab as well. But great ideas from you, John. It's always fantastic seeing the other side of how things are done, and you have such a passion for what you do and the knowledge. It's amazing. It's obvious you've been doing this a long time.
Yes. I've been working on this since really before college. Really, my former architect started in 1987. And then, of course, I had already some basic experience before that with some different classes from mechanical drawing, things like that. So I've been working this for a long time.
Yeah, and your experience shows. JohnRiggio.com if you want to check him out. If you got a question about anything, maybe you're just thinking about, a project or even a commercial building you're working on, John, RIGGIO.com. Always great talking with you, John.
Really nice. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.